Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Government House. My name is Hugh Borum and I'm the Governor's Official Secretary, and I'll be the Master of Ceremonies this afternoon. It's now my pleasure to announce the official party. This afternoon the party comprises Ms Sarah Andrews, the member for Gibson, representing the Premier; the Honourable Michelle Lensink, Shadow Minister for Planning, representing the Leader of the Opposition; Lieutenant Commander Gary Burns, representing the Commanding Officer, Navy; Lieutenant Colonel Peter Newman, representing the Army Area Representative, South Australia; Air Commodore Margot Forster, representing the Senior Australian Defence Force Officer, Edinburgh; and Assistant Commissioner John DeCandia, representing the Commissioner of Police. If you are able, could I please ask you now to be upstanding for the arrival of Her Excellency and to remain standing for the playing of the Vice-Regal Salute.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Government House. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country in the Kaurna language. Kaurna bokana alia, Kaurna miena alia, yaitya miena alia, kumatana yaratananku. I acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to the elders. Now, it's wonderful to have you all here this afternoon. As you heard the Official Secretary say, it is our sixth ceremony, but for you all, it's mostly your first. We want you to feel very much at home here, if you possibly can. It's a big day, I know, and I was reminded this morning some of the award recipients felt it was a very big day, almost too big to manage. And a part of what I want to be able to do as Governor with Rod is to make everyone feel comfortable, to make you feel welcome. For those of you whose service we're acknowledging today, and we do so with gratitude, we want you to be as comfortable here when you're standing next to me, hearing all the things that you've done, as you have been every day that you're giving the service that we acknowledge. Of course, it's a special day for your guests, often the people you love most, family and friends, people who've supported you often throughout the period in which you've given the service. And I want to acknowledge the role that many of you played in making it possible for that service to be given. Of course, you all know intimately the service that we're acknowledging today. The Order of Australia recognises outstanding service and exceptional achievement, and you'll know it all and more. What you'll be surprised to hear, though, is the citations for everybody else. And when you add that up in your minds, you'll realise what an extraordinary thing it is. And for the recipients of awards, for those I'm investing, I hope that you will. You've had a few months to get used to the post-nominals, the letters after your name. We hope you will use those religiously, actually. I hope you will wear your insignia, appropriate to the occasion, of course. I wear my pin every single day. You're familiar with it all at a personal level, but the reason we have members of the Army, Navy, Air Force and South Australian Police at senior levels, the reason the Premier is represented by Sarah Andrews today, Sarah Andrews MP, member for Gibson, and the Leader of the Opposition by the Honourable Michelle Lensink, is because this is important to our society as well too. And I want to acknowledge with thanks your presence, because that creates and helps make the kind of occasion that we want this to be. I also want to acknowledge Ken, here representing the Order of Australia Association of South Australia. I don't think it's improper for me to encourage you all to join. And I want to acknowledge Rick Morris too, who's South Australia's representative on the Council for the Order of Australia, which makes the decisions, deals with all of the nominations. So thank you all. Finally, another piece of encouragement. You'll see today how all of this works if you haven't come across it before, and you will therefore understand a bit more about the process, very special in our country actually. Australians see other Australians doing outstanding things and nominate them directly. Our system doesn't come from the top down. It comes from members of our community recognising service and taking the trouble to nominate someone. It's not a great deal of trouble, but I do want to encourage you to do the same for others. It's your special day today, but there are many other Australians, including here in South Australia, whose service deserves to be recognised. And a final word, I know we've had people online all week. I haven't acknowledged you specifically, so let me look down the barrel of that camera and thank you for joining us today too. I hope you enjoy the ceremony. Official Secretary, over to you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, the following recipient has been appointed an officer in the Order of Australia in the General Division. Emeritus Professor Jack McLean is recognised for distinguished service to road safety research, particularly to the causes and prevention of motor vehicle accidents. An engineer with a doctorate in epidemiology, Professor McLean has been instrumental in changing attitudes towards drink driving in Australia and played a key role in the enforcement of random breath testing. In 1972, Professor McLean founded the Road Accident Research Unit at the University of Adelaide, now a world leader in the field, renowned for its car crash investigation program. Not only did Professor McLean help set the benchmark for crash investigation, but he has also been a leader in the coordination of speed, road infrastructure, head injury, and the protection of pedestrians through improved vehicle design. Professor McLean has authored or co-authored more than 250 scientific papers and technical reports on the role of factors which cause crashes and injuries on the roads. A former president of the International Council of Alcohol, Drugs and Road Safety, Professor McLean has contributed to international road safety research, including heading a World Health Organization report on injury prevention. Emeritus Professor Jack McLean. Your Excellency, the following recipients have been appointed members of the Order of Australia in the General Division. Ms. Helen Germaine Edwards is recognised for significant service to the tourism industry in South Australia. Ms. Edwards, a co-founder and former owner of the renowned The Lane Vineyard in the Adelaide Hills, has been a passionate contributor to economic development and tourism in the region. She has provided strategic leadership as chair of the Adelaide Hills Tourism Board and the South Australian Regional Visitor Strategy, and is a former director of the South Australian Tourism Commission. Known for her ability to engage stakeholders and use creativity and courage in strategic planning, her extensive board experience encompasses the health, education, wine and tourism sectors. A Dame of Honour in the Order of St John of Jerusalem Knights Hospitaller, Ms Edwards is also recognised for her contribution to the wide range of organisations, including membership or advisory roles for the Bay to Birdwood, St Peter's College, the Australian Association for Adolescent Health, the National Wine Centre, the Australian Press Council and the Guardianship Board. A former nurse, she was a registrar for the South Australian Nurses Board for 8 years and is a former Chief Executive Officer of Family Planning SA. Mrs Helen Germaine Edwards. Dr. Amanda Rishbeth is recognised for significant service to public health administration and governance. Dr. Rishbeth has more than 3 decades of experience in health and academia, including 6 years as Chief Executive Officer of the South Australian branch of the National Heart Foundation. Holding a doctorate in health sciences from the University of Adelaide, Dr. Rishbeth's PhD focused on intensive care decision support systems and skill matching to reduce the risk of adverse events. Formerly a Director of Research for Calvary Healthcare, Dr. Rishbeth led the establishment of an international cancer clinical trials unit and co-led a cardiac and general intensive care unit. As head of the National Heart Foundation, Dr. Rishbeth collaborated on strategic efforts towards Australia becoming a leading country in organ donation and transplantation. In 2017, she was selected for a Harvard Advanced Leadership Fellowship, one of only 40 worldwide and the only Australian. She then spent several years as a visiting scientist at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. She is the current chair of the National Blood Authority. Dr. Amanda Rishbeth. Dr. Roger Sexton is recognised for significant service to medical practitioners through health initiatives and to professional associations. In the decades that Dr. Sexton has been a practising GP, he has helped thousands of patients and supported hundreds of doctors in their careers. As co-founder and medical director of Doctors Health South Australia, he has created a national movement to care for health professionals, particularly those working in remote locations. Dr. Sexton is dedicated to supporting the well-being of doctors so they can provide high quality care to patients. He is the chair of the Medical Board of South Australia and is an executive health consultant for Corporate Health Group, where he embeds well-being practices into businesses and performs skin care checks through councils. Dr. Sexton spent time as a clinical tutor at the University of Adelaide Medical School, where he enjoyed positively influencing trainee doctors early in their careers. An avid musician, Dr. Sexton advocates for finding balance in work life, especially in the high-stress and often isolated field of rural health. Guitar and piano are his antidote to work. Dr. Roger Sexton. Your Excellency, the Medal of the Order of Australia in the General Division has been awarded to the following recipients. Mr. Paul Allen Crate is recognised for service to Australian rules football. Mr. Crate has been a fixture of the Southern Football League since donning his boots for the Morphett Vale Club in 1977. His name now graces the league's Roll of Honour. Mr. Crate's football career has seen him coach and play in the SFL, as well as with Christie's Beach, McLaren Vale, Wollonga and Loxton. He won Coach of the Year for the SFL in 2001. Mr. Crate is a life member and ambassador of the SFL, as well as the namesake of its Paul Crate Medal for Best and Fairest in the Junior Girls competition. He is also an honorary life member of Christie's Beach Football Club and sat on its board from 2016 to 19. Apart from Australian rules football, Mr. Crate's sporting background has also seen him involved in surf lifesaving, rugby league and Gaelic football. Mr. Paul Allen Crate. The Honourable John Andrew Darley is recognised for service to the Parliament of South Australia. Mr. Darley became a member of the Legislative Council in 2007, then replacing outgoing MLC Nick Xenophon. Mr. Darley remained in Parliament until the 2022 election, first on the Xenophon team and then as an independent. In 2017, he formed his own party, Advance SA. Before his political career, Mr. Darley held a variety of senior South Australian public sector roles, including Chief Executive Officer of the Department of Lands from 1985 to 1992 and Chief Executive of the Department of State Services from 1992 to 1993. He is a former chair of the State Land Resource Management Committee and of the Burnside Retirement Service. And from 1987 to 2007, he was South Australia's Commissioner of Charitable Funds. The Honourable Mr. John Andrew Darley. Mrs. Eileen Joyce Ferguson is recognised for service to croquet. In 2010, Mrs. Ferguson received a Meritorious Service Award from the Australian Croquet Association, recognising decades of commitment to the sport. She joined the Salisbury Croquet Club in 1980 and spent 40 years on its committee, including 20 as secretary. She is currently club president and has been a life member since 2000. In 1981, she joined the South Australian Croquet Association, becoming a life member in 2011. She has sat on the State Association Board since 2002, serving as president from 2014 to 2020. She was also secretary of the State Coaching Committee for 2 years and State Coaching Director in 2002, and sat on the committee of the World Croquet Federation Tournament held in Adelaide in 2012. Mrs. Eileen Joyce Ferguson. Mr. Trevor John Gordon is recognised for service to the community through a range of organisations. Mr. Gordon's commitment to his community has spanned a career in local government as well as a lifetime of volunteer service. Over the past half-century, Mr. Gordon has given his time to local sporting clubs, schools, libraries, community halls and essential services. He has volunteered with the Country Fire Service in Sherlock, Balaclava, Strathalbyn and Hallett. He is also a past board member of the St John Ambulance in both Tailem Bend and Burra. Deeply involved with the Freemasons, he is currently the Grand Superintendent of South Australia and Northern Territory, and before becoming a Grand Master himself, he was bestowed by the office's highest honour, the Grand Master's Order of Service. In 2016, Mr. Gordon was Coorong District Council's Citizen of the Year. Mr. Trevor John Gordon. Ms. Jenny Marlene Hughes is recognised for service to the community through a range of organisations. Ms. Hughes has been involved with Soroptimists International for more than 40 years. She was a founding member of both the Whyalla and Northern Highlands clubs and is a current member of Soroptimists International, Port Pirie. She is a life member, past president, secretary and treasurer for the Soroptimist International South Australia region. Apart from her lifelong commitment to this worldwide service group for women, Ms. Hughes has also volunteered on the board of Uniting Care Wesley Country South Australia, including 15 years as chairperson. A retired teacher and deputy principal, Ms. Hughes now offers her services to the community as a Justice of the Peace. In 2009, she was the Port Pirie Regional Council Citizen of the Year. Ms. Jenny Marlene Hughes. Mr. Kenneth William Lamb and Mrs. Valerie Petrina Lamb are recognised for service to the community of Roxby Downs. Mr. and Mrs. Lamb represent the extraordinary spirit of support and generosity we have come to associate with outback communities. The Lamb family founded a highly successful business, Olympic Dam Transport Australis, which enabled them to provide jobs for Indigenous youth, raise money for charity, and support the local community. Running a prisoner rehabilitation employment opportunity program was a highlight for the Lambs, with the initiative winning a Department for Correctional Services Community Partnerships Award. Mr. and Mrs. Lamb have also been long-term fundraisers for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. At one point, Mrs. Lamb organised a charity auction which raised over $100,000 in one day. When fires raged or the community was in crisis, Mr. and Mrs. Lamb have stepped up, providing machinery, supplies, and their time. For over 25 years, they have also travelled to Fiji, supplying critical resources such as reading glasses. From building community facilities and cleaning up the town to providing machinery operating licences and opportunities to youth, the Lambs always have their community at heart. Mr. Kenneth William Lamb and Mrs. Valerie Petrina Lamb. Mr. Gordon Bruce Lang is recognised for service to archery. Mr. Lang started in archery in 1976. While he enjoyed hockey and tennis, archery became his consuming passion. Nearly 50 years later, he's still thoroughly committed to the sport, shooting on it for 4 days per week. Mr. Lang has been involved with club and competition level archery since the late 1980s, serving in various roles at Archery South Australia and Archery Australia. He was an event judge and accredited coach before becoming manager of the state team, state president, and now board director. Mr. Lang represented South Australia nationally as state delegate and has also served as vice president of Archery Australia. He remains involved with the Constitution and Rules Committee of that organisation. He also formed a local archery club at Lenswood, where he serves as treasurer. Mr. Gordon Bruce Lang. Mrs. Jennifer Lucille MacDonald is recognised for service to conservation and the environment. Mrs. MacDonald has been an active volunteer for half a century, dedicating countless hours to caring for the land and community of South Australia. In 1996, she was awarded Volunteer of the Year for her contributions to the National Parks and Wildlife Service, South Australia. She is co-editor of the Community Chain Volunteers newsletter and the secretary of Friends of Parks, and has been a member of various conservation parks, including the Flinders Ranges and Simpson Desert National Parks. From running committees and fundraising at kindergartens, primary schools and Girl Guides, to co-founding the Crafty Bees group at the Avio Carisfield Retirement Village and coordinating activities for National Seniors Australia, Mrs. MacDonald has undertaken considerable service to our state's community. Jennifer Lucille MacDonald. Mr. James Robert Porter is recognised for service to the Parliament of Australia. Mr. Porter spent 15 years in federal Parliament as the member for Barker, working with tireless energy and determination for his rural community. Mr. Porter came to this role with a background as a barrister and solicitor, as well as managing a large rural property owned by his family in the state's southeast. While in Parliament, he undertook a range of shadow ministry roles spanning Aboriginal affairs, family and community services, health and housing. Mr. Porter led the first Australian delegation to the USA under the Australian Political Exchange Program, which was established to provide opportunities for Australians to study the political systems of other countries. He has also participated in the parliamentary delegation to the European institutions, representing Australia at both NATO and the European Parliament. After retiring from politics, Mr. Porter was appointed as the German Honorary Consul in South Australia and served in that role for 27 years. Mr. James Robert Porter. Your Excellency, that concludes the presentations.